Here we are taking a look at 5-8 day 2 questions. Let's start at number 15, the fraction type problems. The first thing that we have to do before we do anything is get rid of the fractions because we really don't like fractions. My common denominator here is going to be 6, so I'm going to multiply the entire equation by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 1 times z squared gives me z squared. Minus 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 times z is 3z. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. And there's my equation. Now all we have to do is factor it. And 1 times negative 18 is negative 18. The factors of negative 18 that add up to negative 3 are negative 6 and 3. Since there's no number in front of the squared term, we're going straight to the parentheses. And I have z minus 6 and z plus 3. Now, since there's no number in front of this, the z number, we're just going to do the opposite of this, and I get 6 and negative 3. Let's take a look at number 17 next. 17 is the same type problem, where we have the fractions to start with. Same thing I said last time, we're going to multiply the whole thing by the common denominator, which is 20 in this case. 20 divided by 2 is 10. 10 times x squared gives me 10x squared. 20 divided by 20 is 1. 1 times x is x. And 20 divided by 10 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. Now we can't do anything until we get one of the sides to equal 0. So I'm going to subtract 2, subtract 2. Then we can start the factoring. AC gives me a negative 20. Factors of negative 20 that add up to 1 would be 5 and negative 4. Since we have a number in front of the x squared, we have to split the middle term and factor by grouping. Groupity, group, 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 plus sign. Greatest common factor of my first group looks like a 5x, leaving me with 2x plus 1. Greatest common factor of my second grouping is a negative 2, leaving me with a 2x plus 1. And I'm going to rewrite that as 2x plus 1 times the quantity of 5x minus 2. Since they're both going to be fractional answers, because there's a number in front of the x, I'm going to set them equal to 0 and solve. Minus 1. 2x equals negative 1, negative 1, and divide by 2, divide by 2. So I'm going to have negative 1 half and 2 fifths. So I'm going to write it as negative 1 half and positive 2 fifths. The next one we're going to do is question number 19. Again, same as the last two. We need to get rid of the fractions. Number 1, get everything on one side. So it says equals 0, and then we're going to factor. Greatest common factor, least common multiple of 5, 5, and 10 looks like a 10. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 2 times 4t squared is 8t squared equals 10 divided by 5 is 2. 2 times t is 2t. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. Now we have to get everything on one side. I want the squared term to be positive, so I'm going to move the 2t and the 3 from both sides, leaving me with 8t squared minus 2t minus 3 equals 0. Again, since there's something in front of the squared term, we're going to do the AC, which gives me negative 24. Factors of negative 24 that add up to negative 2 are going to be negative 6 and positive 4. Let's split our middle term. And we're going to do it by grouping at this point. Greatest common factor of my first grouping is 2t, leaving me with 4t minus 3. And I can take 1 out of there, leaving me with 4t minus 3. And I'm going to regroup by writing 4t minus 3 times the quantity of 2t plus 1, setting those equal to 0 because there's a number in front of the variable. And I'm going to have plus 3 divide by 4, divide by 4, so I get 3/4, minus 1, minus 1, and I get 2t equals negative 1, divide by 2, divide by 2. That's a 2. And so I'm going to have 3/4 and negative 1/2. Next one we're going to look at is number 20. Again, it's another one of those fraction ones. So 5x squared divided by 6 minus 7x divided by 2 plus 2/3 equals 0. Greatest common factor there appears to be the 6. Multiplying by 6 gives me 5x squared minus 21x plus 4 equals 0. Multiply AC, I get 20. Factors of 20 that add up to negative 20 are negative 1 and negative 20. I'm going to rewrite it and factor it by grouping. Groupity, group, 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 plus sign in between. Greatest common factor is x, leaving me with 5x minus 1. Greatest common factor of the second grouping looks like a negative 4, leaving me with 5x minus 1. And then I'm going to rewrite it as 5x minus 1 and x minus 4. And my zeros are going to be at the opposite of this. Over this would be 1/5. Opposite of this would be 4. The next one we're going to do is question 31. 31 says 3x, x minus 5 equals 0. Since there's an x out front, we know that one of our factors is going to be 0, and the opposite of negative 5 is 5. Question 32. We have the same type of thing. We have 4x out front, 2x plus 3 equals 0. What times 4 gives me 0? That's a 0. And the other one, I'm going to take 2x plus 3 equals 0, minus 3 from both sides, and I get 2x equals negative 3. Divide by 2, divide by 2, I get negative 3/2. The next one we're going to do is question 35. 35 says 12x squared plus 2x minus 2 equals 0. The first thing that we look for anytime we factor is the greatest common factor. So if I look at this, I see 2 divides into everything, so I'm going to say 6x squared plus x minus 1 equals 0. Do my AC. Factors of negative 6 that add up to 1 give me 3 and negative 2. The 2 hangs out front, and I'm going to split my middle term into 3x and negative 2x. Then I'm going to factor by grouping because there's 4 terms. And my greatest common factor, 2 stays out front, has nothing to do with the rest of the question. Greatest common factor looks like a 3x, leaving me with a 2x plus 1. I can take out a negative 1 there, leaving me with 2x plus 1. Why do I take out a negative 1 instead of a positive 1? Because I want these to match. So when I rewrite it, I can use 2x plus 1 and 3x minus 1. Now, since we can set these equal to 0 and solve it, we would subtract 1 from both sides and divide. So I know that I'm going to have a negative 1/2. Here, opposite of this, over that gives me positive 1/3. The next one we're going to do is question 39. Question 39. 39 says 25x squared minus 40x plus 16 equals 0. This appears to be the perfect square trinomial the way we test for it. Is the first term a perfect square? Yes. Is the last thing a perfect square? Yes. If I multiply 25 times 16, I get 400. What are the factors of 400 that add up to negative 40? That would be negative 20 and negative 20. So they're the same. So we know that it is a perfect squared trinomial. It'll factor into a binomial squared. So square root of the first term gives me 5x. Square root of the last term gives me 4. Sign in front of the middle gives me a negative. Since we're going to have two of these same terms, we don't need to list it twice, just once. If we set it equal to 0, we would add 4 to both sides and divide by 5, and I would get 4/5. Question number 40. We have looks like the same type of problem as the last one. Let's do the tests on it to make sure it is. Is the first thing a perfect square? Yes. Last thing's a perfect square? Yes. If I multiply 9 times 25, I get 225. Factors of 225 that add up to 30 are 15 and 15. They are the same. So I know that this thing's going to factor into a binomial squared. Square root of my first term is 3n. Square root of my last term is 5. Sign in front of my middle term is plus. If I set it equal to 0 and solve, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, divide by 3 on both sides, so I'm going to have a negative 5/3. I do not have to list it twice.